dum diddy dum diddy dum.
Hello and welcome to the Analyst Inside Cricket in association with LV Insurance, and a look back at the first test, the first LV Insurance test match, which sadly came to a damp end, as I'm sure you heard, which, well, in a way, it certainly pleases me because my 2-2 prediction is still intact, and probably your 2-1 prediction is still intact as well. That's 2-1 to India, I think, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. And the reason I went for 2-1, people say, well, there aren't any draws in Test match cricket these days. Well, there aren't many, but I've gone for 2 draws in this series, not because I think that we're going to have high-scoring matches, but because, you know, the English weather, you just cannot trust it, can you? That's the 4th day of Test cricket this summer that's been completely washed out. We had 2 in the World Test Championship final, we had 1 at Lord's, and we had 1 today. And actually, if you look at the playing time, I've been looking at the playing time for this Test match, less than 3 days playing time. We have had 251 overs, and you're supposed to, a full test match is 450 overs. So the players, well, it was a really good game while they're out there, but the weather in Nottingham won. And it was hugely frustrating, really. It was really frustrating. I think we both felt last night that India were the favourites to win the game. England had a chance today, but so do you think, yours, it feels like an opportunity missed for India, an opportunity lost for them?
Yeah, definitely. They don't traditionally start series very well, do they? Especially away from home. And you think of that 36 all out in Adelaide, for instance, in Australia. And I think that this was a great opportunity for them to really get a lead in the series and really put a marker down. We kind of predicted, didn't we, that they'd probably win by 4 or 5 wickets. I mean, there would be potentially 9 wicket-taking balls out there, but I couldn't see all 9 Indian wickets falling. So it was a wonderful opportunity. The pitch was pretty good, still with a bit of help for the bowlers, fast outfield. Couldn't really see them not getting 150 with that batting lineup. So, yeah, I think England dodged a bullet. But, in a way, the shame of it all is that it would have been a fascinating final day because there would have been some nip and tuck and some ebb and flow and, a couple of, Kohli was on a king pair for a start. That would have been brilliant to have him. Imagine him coming in.
King was on a king pair.
Yeah, King was on a king pair. Imagine him coming in facing Jimmy on a king pair. That would be just a brilliant little little vignette in the Test match overall. But yeah, India will feel disappointed.
Yeah, definitely. It's all conjecture, of course. We can speculate for as long as we like about who was going to go on and win this Test match. But India did control the game almost throughout, really. England it always seemed to me as though England were coming from behind. There was that one time on the first day when Bairstow and Root were together, and England were about 130 for 3. And England were just beginning to threaten a reasonable score. But whenever they sort of threatened to get away, India dragged them back, and they've got that class bowling attack, and they've got a class batting side as well. And they got enough runs on the board in that first innings to put pressure on England in the second. England did well in the second innings, didn't they? And they were under tremendous pressure, really. It could have been one of those situations where they were bowled out for 150 or whatever, even fewer as they were against New Zealand, and India knocked them off. So they showed that determination, mainly thanks to Root, though. Root has carried England through this Test match, 173 runs in all. The next highest England batter in this Test match overall in terms of runs, joint second, Bairstow and Curran number 8, Bairstow number 5 with 59 runs each. So there were some pretty disappointing performances from England's batting lineup. But it's so frustrating, really, because it didn't rain yesterday when everyone said it was going to, or the forecaster said it was going to. And today was a very similar forecast to yesterday, and it rained for most of the day. Although, having said that, of course, as soon as they called the game off, the sun came out. But it did rain a little bit afterwards, but it's been dry for the most part. Since the game has been called off, it has been dry for the most part. And we're recording this just before 6 o'clock on Sunday, and they could have played till 7:30 this evening to get the overs in. The light might have come into it as well. It's a slightly gloomy evening. but that's the way of it, isn't it? The umpires have to make a decision. There are a few disgruntled supporters, but I think they accepted it. It was a very damp day in Nottingham today. I mean, let's hope that this is the final bit of weather intervention, or major weather intervention of the summer. 4 days, as I say, already are washed out. The forecast, thank goodness, for Lords is pretty good. So we've got that to look forward to in the next few days. And it is a very quick turnaround. I think we should hear from Joe Root, should we? The England captain, who spoke afterwards on his Zoom press conference, and this is what he had to say.
I think from my perspective, at one stage it looked like we could have potentially had 40 overs, and I think within that period, felt like we'd have been able to create 9 chances on the surface like that. So in many ways, I think actually the weather's robbed us all of a fantastic final day's Test cricket, which is a slight shame. I think I'd be lying if I won't say India were probably in the driving seat going into today. But on the wicket like that you get a couple of wickets in a cluster and the game can turn on its head. Final day, the pressures of batting last on the 5th day wicket. Things could very, very quickly have fallen in our favour. And we've certainly believed that we'd have been able to create 9 more chances. So, if we'd have been good enough in the field and taken those, then we could have been sat here 1-0. But unfortunately, the weather's won.
Do you feel like you at least end the game in a bit of a brighter spot than you were after first innings, in that the last action that we did see was building a lead and then hunting wickets? Is there a bit of positivity about that, or how you assess the sort of dressing room?
Yeah, and I think actually we grew into the game very well. I thought that after our first innings we were well below par. We felt, having played and batted on it, came off thinking 250 on there would have been a strong first innings score, or at least par, and it would have made life a lot trickier for India in their first innings. That being said, I just still think we bowled very well. We probably bowled a little bit wide to start with, but after lunch we came out and we found a really good line, asked very good questions of the defence, and showed our class with the ball. There were a few glimpses of what we're capable with the bat in the second innings. I thought we played with a better intent. We looked like we were really enjoying and thriving in the environment, and you could see guys a little bit more relaxed, a bit more clear about how they wanted to go and play, and certainly feel like going into the next Test match, if we can carry that forward, then you'll see some better performances.
Obviously, you'll have discussions about the team in the coming days, but Virat has just said on TV that he feels the template and the balance of his side is what he thinks is right for this series now. We talked about before the series that you have a question to answer with balance, and I just wonder, over the last 5 days as captain, whether you are happy with the balance or whether that is something you might look at again.
I think it's something that we will continue to keep looking at. Not something that we want to try and find something settled sooner rather than later. But ultimately, I think on conditions and where we're going, we might have to alter our side slightly. We might not. We might turn up at Lords and see things very similar. But as always, you want continuity. Something that we haven't had, whether that be to rest and rotation, whether it be to COVID, to injuries, a number of other factors. There have been a lot of obstacles for us to overcome as a side. There might be more in the future. We just got to be adaptable, got to be pragmatic, and the guys that get the opportunity have really got to keep looking to stand up and try and win games for England.
Well, England have already picked a squad for the first 2 Test matches, but they can bring players in if they want to, if they feel they need to. They've got enough players to pick for already, in theory, because they chose 17. Of course, Stokes dropped out and then Overton came in. So England have got scope for changing it. Players who could come in from the outside, in theory, maybe talking about balancing the side, Moeen Ali, a spinner who can bat, that would help balance the side. Top of the order, someone who could come in is David Malan if England feel they need to change that top 3. But they do seem, and we talked about this in our preview podcast, they're pretty conservative. I mean, Sibley's not had a great Test match. Crawley's not had a great Test match. I mean, Sibley can stay in but not score, and Zach Crawley just can't stay in at the moment. So, I mean, what on earth do they do? Do you think it will roughly be same again, Yoz?
Yeah, I do. I actually think possibly if Ollie Pope is fit, he'll come in for
Yeah.
Dan Lawrence. I just think he's a tighter player. He's got more Test match experience, and so I would definitely, if he's fit, I'd prefer Pope to Lawrence. Lawrence will come again, I'm sure, but Pope at the moment is a superior player. I think you have to stick with the top three just for one more test, and just give them the opportunity to try and find their way. Crawley, for me, is a class player who just needs to be more positive, I think, and believe in himself a bit more. And I think Joe Root said that in his press conference after the game. Sibley, he's not entirely convincing to me. I've said that several times, but I suppose he deserves one more go. And then if he fails again, then the chance is to bring Hamid in for the third test, which there's a bit of a break between the second and third. I mean, as far as the bowlers are concerned, I'd stick with Anderson and Broad. I mean, they might think about Wood, I suppose, for Broad, possibly for the next test. And then do they keep Curran or do they go with Leach? I think it depends who you think will actually take the most wickets. I mean, it depends a little bit on the surface as well, but Lords always tends to help seamers a bit, especially when it's cloudy, and there's the slope to use as well. Leach, to me, he doesn't feel like a wicket-taking bowler, and he weakens the batting. So, sad though it is to say, I think they might go in without a spinner again. Moeen Ali won't be that effective against this Indian team because they've only got one left-hander in the top six, and that's Pant. And so, I just think they probably would rather, if they're going to have a spinner, they'd rather have a left-arm spinner. But the left-arm spinner is just not potent enough, really, unless it's a massive turner. So they'll probably go with the same bowling attack. LV General Insurance and the ECB's £1 million Fund for Runs community initiative has awarded a grant to Rotherham Town Cricket Club, who are looking to cricket to act as a catalyst for community cohesion in the town. Based in the centre of a diverse low-income community, the club are looking to change the impression that the sport is unaffordable by offering heavily discounted sessions with their grant. The club see it as vital that they attract more people from the local community and demonstrate that Rotherham Town CC is their club. The club will be putting on All-Stars and Dynamos programmes to introduce new children to the sport from the community in central Rotherham. They'll also be hosting a midsummer women's softball festival to offer an opportunity for all the family to be involved in cricket. And the inner city campaigns that a lot of sponsors like LV Insurance are really undertaking is fantastic, actually, because there's so much potential in those inner cities, but nowhere for them to play.
We've talked about England's team news for Lords. I mean, there is some room for manoeuvre there, but I agree with you. It's not an easy side to balance, of course, without Ben Stokes. And Sam Curran in this game, he did add runs for England, but of course he didn't take any wickets. So that he did feel like at times that the weak link in England's four-man attack, and it is essentially a four-man attack, isn't it? I mean, they were the ones that bowled all the overs. We saw no spin at all from Root and the other backup bowlers. If it is going to be dry at Lords and warm over 5 days, can four bowlers do the job? That's the problem. That's the problem they've got, and of course, in the New Zealand Test match earlier this year, we thought actually the ball might spin, but we didn't really see any spinners play. I mean, England had Root and New Zealand had Santner, and that they weren't able to exploit the conditions at Lords, towards the back end of the game for one reason or another. I mean, Santner was bowling on the last day, not a great bowler actually. He was left out for the next Test match and didn't make the World Test Championship final. But it can spin at Lords. I suppose the only thing is, in the lead up to the game, what's the weather going to be like? If it's going to be a warm, dry 3 days leading up to Lords, then you never know. There could be some spin there, and so that's the difficulty for England. But as you mentioned, Jack Leach. It means you have Leach, Broad, Anderson as your 9-10 Jack. It does leave you a little bit thin. It presumably would take Curran out of the side because Robinson's got to play. I mean, Robinson's made a great impression so far on the field in his first two Test matches, 12 wickets. There's something about him as well. I mean, the way he batted yesterday evening, it was he only flickered briefly, but He comes out, he's positive, he can play some shots, and you could see him down the line. I mean, he actually did that in the first test match. He got some useful runs. How well?
Yeah.
I mean, how well do you? What sort of prospect does he look to you?
Well, that's brilliant. And I like the way he doesn't take a backward step. You know, he's in the batsman's face, isn't he? Even when he's batting, he's in the bowler's face. So I like his approach. And I thought he spoke when you interviewed him a couple of days ago. I thought he spoke with a lot of clarity and sense and maturity, actually, in a way. Joe Root says he's really matured and that he's learned his lessons from the mistakes he's made, and with regard to those old tweets and stuff and the suspension. I think he's impressive and he's awkward. He's one of those horrible bowlers to face. I bet he's the worst bowler to face in the nets because he bowls at horrible length. It jams into the top of the bat and often hits you on the fingers or hits you in the inner thigh or something in a slightly juicy net. So no one probably likes facing him in the nets. And he just bowls a really awkward length and doesn't give the batsman too much, can move the ball both ways. You know, some people have compared him to Angus Fraser, but Angus Fraser didn't have that swing either way, which Robinson definitely has. He's more of a Hazelwood or someone like that. And just a bowler that is at you all the time. So yeah, I think he's done well. I mean, again, talking about Lords, well, look, I'm just consulting my weather app here on my phone, and it does look like a good forecast. Thursday, obviously this can change, but Thursday and Friday, 24, sunny. Saturday and Sunday, 23, sort of reasonable weather. Sort of slightly overcast, but no rain. So actually no rain forecast for the whole test match. But a bit of overcast weather. So, you know, again, Curran, for me, may just come into the equation. He does need a bit of swing. He's not going to be as potent as Robinson, obviously, but he can take wickets, and he's so invaluable. Again, he's someone who doesn't take a backward step. He's just got a really good attitude to the competition and never overawed. So, you know, you want those good characters in your team.
I mean, one thing about Sam Curran, do you think he could open the bowling and, you know, have a look? He can swing the new ball. So do you?
Yes.
You know,
yeah.
Can you look at him for 3 overs and say, okay, if it's not working,
yeah, why not?
You know, if it's going gun barrel straight,
Yeah,
then
that's a good shout.
Yeah,
I agree. It's again, especially at Lords, he comes. I mean, he and Anderson might be sort of fighting over the same end because Jimmy likes to bowl from the pavilion end, and Sam Curran naturally would use the slope from the pavilion end well. So it might not be an easy matter getting him on at the right end. But yeah, I agree. A little bit of swing, and then if there's none, you bring Broad on. Yeah, so that's not a bad shout actually. And he just offers something different, and he can go round the wicket, and you know, maybe the Trent Bridge pitch rewarded those back of a length taller bowlers or bowlers who had a bit more zip, but Lords might go underground later and he can start hitting people on the pads. So I think he's just got that wicket taking knack. Didn't happen in this test, but it kind of wasn't required, I suppose, as much. But he's someone who can come on in the 40th and 50th over and make something happen. You know, I know we sort of talked about him in the past as a sort of poor man's Chaminda Vaas, and he doesn't quite get the movement or the zip or the height. He's got, because he's shorter, he doesn't get much bounce. But sometimes on certain pitches that can be an advantage.
Well, we talked about England's selection issues or otherwise for the next Test match. What about India? It's interesting, actually, the Virat Kohli, as Joe Root alluded to earlier in this podcast, saying that the template of 4 and 1 is something that they quite like for this series. So that means, well, what does it mean for Ravichandran Ashwin? Does it mean Jadeja stays in the team, or do they mix and match? What do India do? Their bowlers bowled quite a lot of overs in this game. Bumrah 40, Shami 33, Siraj 37, Taka 26. They've got 4 days, full days in which to recover for Lords. There's Ishant waiting in the wings. There's Umesh Yadav waiting in the wings. What do you think India might do?
I reckon they'll play Ashwin because I think they know how effective he is. And he's obviously got a great deal of success against left-handers, but he's good against right-handers as well. And I'd be looking at the forecast, they'll think there might be a bit of turn. He's got the slope to use as well, and the slope is really valuable for off spinners because they can go from the pavilion end and spin the ball down the slope, and then they can go from the nursery end and sort of make the ball curve away from the right hander down the slope the other way. So you've got that sort of extra bit of incentive, I think, to be a spinner. Graham Swan was always excellent at Lords, regardless of whether he was bowling at right-handers or left-handers. So I think Thakur is expendable. The other three seamers and Ashwin and Jadeja feels more natural to me for their team on a good pitch in reasonable climate. When the weather's good. So I think they're saying, oh yeah, we'll have the same team, the same balance is just probably bullshit. And actually, I bet you they change it.
Right. Well, that'll be an interesting thing to look out for on Thursday morning. You've gone for it, Yols, there. Anyway, I mean, we know for a fact that in that World Test Championship final, they did go 3-2, and they were definitely a seamer light. But the weather forecast and the weather in the next few days might change their mind up. I mean, Ashwin he's a handful, obviously, and so there's Jadeja. I mean, you basically want to play them both. I mean, is there any case, do you think? I mean, it's not easy to do this for him. Is there any case for, I don't know, Jadeja for Rahane, or is that too high in the order for?
No, that's too
someone
high.
Ravi Jadeja.
They're definitely won't do that. I tell you what really needs to happen is that India need to leave Ashwin out and give him to England, and that would be England need Ashwin. Can't we get a sort of a quick passport agreement or something? Because imagine how he would transform England's side. They're struggling for all-rounders that are effective with bat and ball, and he would just solve so many issues, actually. But obviously, it's not going to happen.
No. Well, England would give a lot for a cricketer like Ravichandran Ashwin. I mean, some people say, well, they have got one. They've got one in Moeen Ali, who's got nearly 200 Test match wickets.
Moeen Ali's just not as crafty, is he? He's just not. I love it. No. I love Moeen. He's a brilliant cricketer. He's got great spirit, but he's not a clever bowler like Ashwin. Ashwin goes home at night. We know this. He goes home at night and studies his notes and records things into a voice recorder about how things worked and what things he needs to change for tomorrow. I mean, he's a total sort of professor of spin, whereas Moeen is just a very natural cricketer who I don't feel his bowling has ever really evolved particularly. It's a shame because he's got natural talent, but he hasn't allied that to real development. Yeah,
I mean, he's close on 200 Test match wickets, and also as well, the Joe Root stat yesterday that 400s this year. He's had an amazing year. Do you know Moeen Ali scored four Test hundreds in 2016? It's one of those sort of frustrating ones because there's Moeen's obviously got a huge amount of talent. It feels at the moment as though his international career is sort of very much on hold, really. Anyway, 0-0 after the first Test match. As you say, your 2-2 is still alive. My 2-1 India is still alive, and it's on to Lords. And we really are hoping for much better weather, and that is the suggestion. Whether England will be better for the gallop, if you like, having had a bit of red ball practice because they didn't have much going into this Test match, we shall see, or whether India's class will tell when we get to Lords on Thursday. Really looking forward to it. It's sort of whetted our appetite because it's been a really good game, the 3 days or just under 3 days we had, but inconclusive in the end. We can talk about it forever, who would have won this Test match, but we will never know. We'll be back with you on Thursday evening to wrap up the first day of the second Test match, and let's hope the sun shines as well.
Dum diddy dum diddy dum.